Thank you and good morning, everybody. For those of you who were not here yesterday, my name is Bill Schwartz with TBM Consulting Group, one of the world's largest Lean Six Sigma consulting firms. You know, as I reflect back on my discussions over the last day or so and really attending conferences like this for many years, I continue to hear a consistent theme from people, and the question is typically, what can I do when I get back to convince my senior management that this is a good thing, that continuous improvement, Lean Six Sigma is a good improvement priority. And what we find is that the most successful programs have the unwavering support of the CEO and the management team. So how do you do that if you don't have it? How do you get that support? How do you get it from your boss? How do you get it from the CEO? So we think a lot about this, and I think adults learn in several different ways. And these are the things that you need to try to stimulate in order to get something different to happen than what's currently happening in your organization. The first is knowledge. Build the knowledge by reading. Some people like to read about things, get the knowledge, feel like they have some facts and understanding of the process. So obviously there are lots of good books. That's why you see LEI has published numerous books on the subject. Second is to go see it. Tour a Lean facility. That's what tours are really good for, is to see a transformation after it's happened, to understand more about it. Lots of different ways to do that at conferences like this and others. Third is hear about it from peers. Get a CEO to CEO dialogue going. There's nothing like a senior manager hearing it from a zealot, somebody who's really excited. And there are many people that you can think of if you've followed this trend over the last 15 years, like Art Byrne and George Koenigsaker and other CEOs of major corporations who are totally immersed in this process and get it. And the last, really, most important, is to do it. Learn by doing. Get out on the shop floor. We say go to the Gemba and participate in an event, a one-day Point Kaizen event, a 5-day event, to go to Japan, participate. Get that feeling, get those goosebumps that you feel when you see continuous improvement happening at the shop floor or at the office level. So if you don't have the full support of your management team, create an agenda of things that you can do when you get back to try to get people off dead center, to try to get people to change. I think it'll help you accelerate your program and improve the results that your organization is getting. So I hope each of you has met and networked with 5 or 10 people this week, and I hope you're going back with some business cards with some friends. Another benefit of conferences like this is to really create a personal network of people who are doing good things in manufacturing and who are changing the way you do business. And we find that as we meet people over the years that this is a wonderful community and lots of good friends, and people are extremely willing to help. Call for help, call to go visit, exchange tour sites, get people exchanging on different events. It's a wonderful opportunity for all of you. So with that in mind, we have another outstanding opportunity to learn from our next guest speaker, Eddie Wilkinson. Eddie is Vice President of Quality and Product Safety at Bendix Commercial Vehicle Systems, and he's also a member of the Bendix Leadership Committee. As Vice President of Quality and Product Safety, he is charged with leading quality assurance and product safety performance, as well as company-wide focus on product reliability. Eddie's had an interesting career. Prior to his current position, Eddie served as Operations Director at Bendix. And in that position, he was responsible for manufacturing and operations for all North American facilities. A Bendix veteran with more than a decade of company service, Wilkinson served over 7 years in progressive plant management positions at Bendix Manufacturing Campus in Acuna, Mexico, and ultimately was named country manager for that company. Under his leadership, the company's Mexican operations experienced outstanding business growth as well as ongoing expansion, specifically in OE manufacturing, through improved ongoing employee development and education and increased community support and activities and continued investment in the facility. One of Wilkinson's career highlights, he may talk about it, includes hosting then-President of Mexico, Vicente Fox, and other dignitaries to discuss manufacturing in Mexico. Wilkinson is a certified lean manufacturing expert, a distinction he earned from his experience during the years at Allied Signal and Honeywell Aerospace. He leveraged that training and experience to lead the Bendix Global Truck Production System, establishing a foundation for long-term production excellence. Wilkinson holds a bachelor's degree in Business Administration from Clayton State University in Atlanta and a Master's in Business Administration from DeSalle University in Allentown, PA. Before I introduce Eddie, I'd like to ask all of you to turn off your cell phones so that we will have no interruptions during his presentation. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Eddie Wilkinson to the stage.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks, Bill. Good morning, everyone. As he said, my name is Eddie Wilkinson, and actually I want to have a chance today to talk to you about two things that I really enjoy a lot, and that's lean as well as quality. In my title, as he mentioned before, quality is the title today, but I have the unique opportunity that lean manufacturing and business excellence also reports into our quality organization. So that's sort of why you'll see today the linkage to quality and to lean. So I'll take a few minutes and go through that briefly. But Bill pointed out the four reasons or four important points of getting someone to buy in, especially your leadership, which is critical, and I'll talk about that here in a few minutes. The first was knowledge and benefit. The second one was go see it, go witness the transformation. And the third was hear about it from others. Fourth, just do it. So I'll cover some of those and how we went through that in our business, but I'd like to add a fifth one. If you really want to engage your leadership, if you really want to engage your business, make sure your efforts tie to that business's burning platform. What are the burning platforms? What is making the business nervous? What's challenging your business? So I will tie some of the ways that we did that throughout the presentation today. Let's find out if I can get this to work. Very good. There we go. Before I start, I want to tell you a little bit about our company. Bendix was founded in 1927. We have over 75 years of experience. We're a member of the Knorr-Bremse family, which is a German-owned company that purchased us from Honeywell Allied Signal. In Bendix North America, we have about 2,100 employees. Our global sales for total Knorr-Bremse is roughly around $4.4 billion. We invest about 5% of our sales in research and development. 5 manufacturing facilities in North America, 5 distribution locations, as well as 3 research centers. Our business is divided into 4 segments: charging systems, control systems, modules, and wheel-in business that we have with our joint venture. We'll talk about that a little bit more later as well. Our products and services, we develop and supply leading-edge technologies to the truck business, specifically in OE and aftermarket under the brand name of Bendix for medium and heavy-duty trucks, tractor trailers, buses, and commercial vehicles. You can see just a sample of our customers down on the bottom here, which range from PACCAR to Peterbilt, Volvo, etc. A little bit about our facilities, if you will. We have our headquarters in Elyria, Ohio. You see in the center there, Huntington facility. In Huntington, Indiana, we have manufacturing, remanufacturing, as well as a module center out there. I'll talk about that here in a few minutes. And then in Acuna, Mexico, where I spent a few years, we have our low-cost country assembly as well as machining. Both of those have experienced quite a bit of lean transformation over the years through our truck production systems or Knorr production systems. We'll talk about that in a minute as well. And then our joint venture, BSFB, here in Bowling Green, Kentucky, not too far from here, we have our manufacturing operations, and then in Fresno, California as well. We're a growth company, so this year we've been fortunate in 2008 to add several key business challenges for ourselves, and that is we had 2 new acquisitions, Smart Tire Technology from Vancouver, British Columbia, and Vorad, Eaton Vorad collision warning mitigation system that we purchased from them as well. Our scope of breakthrough quality, which I'll talk to you more about throughout the whole presentation, basically spanned and covered all the facilities that we just showed you, covered all locations, all our processes. And while we were trying to implement our quality initiatives and our lean initiatives, we also were implementing a ERP system transformation. So we took on a lot as an organization. For breakthrough quality, our vision was to drive breakthrough levels of improvement across the business, not just your traditional continuous improvement. And for us, I'll go back and point out that for many, many years, we've seen small improvements year over year, but we haven't seen significant improvements or substantial or what I refer to as step change improvements. These step change improvements are what I'm referring to when I say breakthrough quality initiative, where we're looking for transformation, if you will. How do we move our business across from one state to the next? So it's important. We went and created an initiative we developed a guidebook. We had our quality vision and purpose, structure with maturity paths, defined our core processes and redefined those once again if necessary, created an implementation strategy, basic framework and foundation for how we move forward, and then I'll talk to you a little bit more about our organizational change management to help get the rest of the business engaged. So basically there's 4 areas. Part of my background is marketing, so I've not been able to leave that. So I have the 4 P's here, but they're not marketing. So it's product development and linkage. I'll talk to you about that today. Product design and quality, processes and systems, and product improvements in general. Looking for, again, a step change in our business. So as I mentioned, the 5th thing, the driving platform, what is your burning platform or the key drivers for your business? When you go back to your organizations, try to understand what are those key drivers. Here's our key drivers. I want to take a second, though. Before I go into the presentation in more detail, I have more examples today. I have less bullets, less philosophy, but more examples of what we did and how we accomplished the changes that we've changed and gone through. Our top 5 reasons where customer requirements were changing and their demand on satisfaction in the automotive industry is getting down to single-digit PPM requirements. Product safety failures are unacceptable in the field, unacceptable in our business. And for us, a product safety is a bus accident. For us, product safety is failure for a vehicle to stop, or one that's supposed to be stopped and decides to start rolling, none of which are considered acceptable. From there, we also had product quality is critical to our future success. This was how I tied to the burning platform. I'm sitting in a presentation with our CEO. Our CEO is presenting to 40 of our top talent across the business and starts talking about the things that we've done very well. This is in 2007 and 8. And things are going well for our business. But his concern and his challenge was quality. He looked around the business. We've grown it well. We've had success in making our business change and transform in certain areas. But the concern was around quality. He made it loud and clear. The risk to our business and our competitors have an advantage on us if their quality exceeds our quality, and we have issues in the field that we can't manage. So that was our burning platform. So that's what I used to go drive a complete change in the organization, and we piggybacked off of that exercise and that idea for a couple of years now. So it's lasted for us. In addition, if you look, number 4, recalls and warranty. Depending on your business, you may or may not have to face recalls. In food industries, we have recalls. I know in the automotive industry and others. If you're recalling a product, you're wasting time and energy as well as substantial costs. So the recalls are not acceptable to our business. That was another burning platform. And then I also leveraged the need. We were changing our ERP system, SAP, for those of you that are familiar with that. So that endeavor was large for us. Leverage that change. If you're going to change all your processes, why not change them for the better? Don't just change them to something new. So for us, and what I ask you as you go back to your business, identify your driving forces. What are those things that's driving your business besides the economy of which you may have trouble controlling today? What are those things that's driving your business? Just a little bit about our guidebook. Here's a specific example. You'll see 8 categories here. But in addition to the guidebook, we went through focus groups where we challenged our processes and evaluated it. In the focus groups, we asked for reality. What's the reality check? We wanted our people to tell us, this is what I think we should or shouldn't be doing. Here's what I thought you didn't want me to do for the last couple years, but I wish I could have done. There's a lot of hidden knowledge in the business, and how do you tap into that hidden knowledge? You'd be surprised if you really get people to talk to you that if they could have done this, that would have resolved that. What are those things? It's time to listen and time to hear those things and then take action on them. So that's part of how we got to our development of our guidebook here. And we have 8 categories. It's a very elaborate guidebook, so I won't cover all of those today, but I want to highlight a few. So taking an honest look, getting into conversations with your individuals, and focusing on the barriers and identifying those barriers and addressing those is important. Our core processes in our guidebook were leadership, numerous exercises, defined expectations, defined deliverables in the guidebook for our leadership. Voice of the customer, product design, which very seldom gets included in the lean organization. How many times as a lean manufacturing expert or a lean expert in your organization have you seen them go change design? based off what you saw in your facility. In my experience, I haven't seen it a lot until we went through this program. Equipment and workplace design, much more traditional. Regional plants, manufacturing location and focus. Suppliers, how many times does our manufacturing organization, me, guilty, say, if our suppliers did it better, we would be better. But you don't have necessarily the chance to focus on everything the supplier is doing, but you have to focus on something. And I'll talk about that in a few minutes. But your internal, what you can control, is certainly the best opportunity and the best place to start. Measures and KPIs, that's key process indicators, and lessons learned. This is an example right out of our guidebook that talks about our structured approach and a maturity path. It's important to recognize we're trying to take ourselves from the beginning stage, and it is our beginning, it's where we start, to move to breakthrough levels. You can't read the details in the boxes, but in the boxes, the top side of each of those is getting started. As Bill mentioned earlier, just do it. Well, the first part of our overall Breakthrough Quality Initiative was just doing it with foundation projects. Next was, if you see in the middle, momentum projects. And then, finally, breakthrough projects. So we'll talk about how that ties. I put up here one example, TPM. I think most of us can relate to total productive, total preventative maintenance. And I think we'll talk about that. But we defined for every aspect of our guidebook what the beginning behaviors would be expected, improving, succeeding, and leading. So as an example, in beginning, this is where we would see the implementation. We would get started. In the improving stage, a very specific, we would see implementation evidence of the specific action with TPM. Then in the succeeding stage, we would see sustained improvements over time. And then in the breakthrough stage, we would be achieving benchmark for the rest of our organizations or either benchmark for other corporations. Provide very clear, defined expectations for each stage is one of the things that we accomplished here. I have over 100 processes, so I can't cover them all, and this is the one example that we use. So let's stay a little bit with this example. In total preventative maintenance, for example, it starts off talking about standardized procedures and test stand maintenance. That's how you improve. Let's go address those. But if we move over to the middle section where we see improving and succeeding, we start talking about creating a network of champions and experts and leveraging those in the business. That's what that degree of succeeding would be. Moving beyond the pilot projects that we have and seeing it become ingrained in the site overall. And then from there, using layered process audits to get leadership engaged in driving the change in the location. Those are very specific for TPM. We have those types of details prescribed for all 100 processes across our business. And then final, in the breakthrough stage, we would measure where we've internalized it, where we have now standards are part of our normal training and normal practice. We're no longer in the state of the operator is operating the machine and maintenance is done by the mechanic, by the maintenance department. And this is a simple example, but when you have the complete prescription of these details across all your processes, it becomes a good reference book for you. So in this particular state, we can identify current state and then move ourselves to the future state because we've defined what future state looks like. So if I can go back to my 4 Ps, getting into the first P here of people development linkage. One of the common challenges that we face is how do we get everyone engaged? How do we get our business to move from one state to the next? And again, remember, in my case, we're looking for breakthrough change. We're not looking for incremental changes in a production spot. We're trying to drive change across the business. So first, you'll see Q first, I apologize, in the picture in some of the cases. That's our brand name for our initiative, if you will, for breakthrough quality. And the pictures that you see on the right are examples that come straight out of our guidebook. So you'll see some of the samples that we have there as well. And I think it's important, we'll talk about in the traditional lean training that we have, we recognize the need for buy-in. We all understand the need for buy-in. But I'm looking for a little more than buy-in. I'm looking for organizational commitment. So I have a tool that if you're going that degree of change, that degree of involvement, we have a tool here that we can recommend how to use and how to go approach that. It's how the keys to success and the keys to change are going to rely in changing with our people. So I'm going to take a little bit of a liberty. Here's an example of how one of our first engagements with our organization and how we got everyone involved. And I'd like to, if I could, if you don't mind, ask everyone to stand up. Could I get everyone to stand up? Now, I told HR I would make sure I got everyone to exercise today. So I'm going to do my best. This is my idea of exercise. That's the extent you're just going to stand up. And if I could get you, if in the business, if anyone in here, being from the north, from the south, living in the north, I'm dependent on a snowplow. If you're dependent on a snowplow to get to work ever through the winter, I know some of you are laughing at this, but really it does happen. If you're depending on a snowplow when it's driving to be safe, and you're coming at that vehicle, if you're dependent on a snowplow, go ahead and have a seat. Yeah, the rest of you, I want to live where you're living. Next, notice all the snow in these pictures. I apologize for that. That's what I see when I live in Cleveland now from Louisiana. If you're dependent on a vehicle to safely navigate your neighborhood, not run over your mailbox, not run over your vehicle, not run over the children that are waiting out there, but dependent on a garbage truck to stop and deliver, pick up safely, stop its vehicle, go ahead and have a seat. More seriously, if your children ride a school bus, if you're dependent on a school bus functioning properly, if you ride a school bus yourself, you might, I guess, okay. But if you're dependent on a school bus and you realize the importance that that vehicle has to stop properly and safely, go ahead and have a seat. If your children are dependent upon it also. If you work in a company where your equipment is delivered, your critical products are delivered by a truck, depending on safety. If you drive down the highway and you're riding in front of a truck and you hope that it stops when you stop. If you're driving down the highway and you're behind a truck and you hope that it doesn't stop too suddenly when you're too close to it. If you're driving beside a truck and you hope it properly steers when it should, because we're also in steering, go ahead and have a seat. Now, if I haven't got everyone sitting down, which it looks like we do, except the cameraman, you can sit down too, take a break. If you look at the importance of stopping, or the importance of our vehicles on the road driving safely, it's personal to all of us. So how do you turn in your product, if you can, into what's personal for your people, into what's personal for your suppliers, into something that matters significantly to them? And just in case we had anyone still standing, if you're trying to drive profitability in your business, eliminate waste and reduce costs, that's where we get to. Many times we start with that as our initiative to go change. That's old. It's a challenge to get someone to really buy into because of all the different improvements we've done over the years. Start with your burning platforms. Start with your safety. Start with something that's personal. So in order to successfully do that, we need to drive change in our organization. It needs to be sustainable change. And so for us, we created a structured approach to our OCM, which is our Organizational Change Management Model. Went through a section of getting ready for the change, which I just gave an example of how we create the desire, how we create the burning platform. Then, how do you make it happen? How do you make it work? And then after that, how do you make it stick? And these are not line changes. These are the changes in your people and in their behaviors and in your expectations of their behaviors. So how do you move your organization from current state to the future state? How do you move your plant from current state to future state? And you can certainly apply it in the department as well. Critical to have leadership buy-in, and Bill touched on that, and I'm sure you've seen that throughout your experiences. So now that we've got somewhat of an effective and sustainable system to go drive change in our business, we'll move on and talk about the roadmap of change. This is somewhat of an interesting picture, but if you think of us, we're again in the trucking industry, I'll remind you that. And so the truck driving down the road are our business and processes, if you will. You see the external forces really driving on our current state, and a lot of push from economic challenges, from others, from our business paradigms, a lot of internal pushes as well as external pushes on our current business model. But when we go to face change, we're going to go through a bit of a transition model. I'll talk about that briefly. And then we're going to have our leadership, if you see in the upper side of the slide. Never underestimate the change that the leadership has to go through as well to really believe and buy into what we're doing. And then organizational capability is the lower line. If your change is significant and your future state is different than where you really think it is today, you will need to change capability within your business. How do you do that to achieve the future state? So if we talk about creating a bit of a change roadmap, that was our roadmap. What would your roadmap look like? What would your change look like? And in that, make sure you understand, get some partners to help you and others, understand what your transition curve looks like. Going through denial, resistance, exploration, and then going through and getting a commitment is what we would all go through. And more often than not, we feel we've got commitment, but we really still have a degree of resistance, and in some cases, denial. So that's what we found, and that was the challenge that we faced. Important to all is realizing how are we going to get leadership to transition as well. The normal expectations that leadership has produced us today's results. They should accept their ownership in that. Their expectation is going to yield today's results. No change in expectation very rarely will change significant results. So that's what we're talking about here. And who and how within your organization will you navigate through the change? In our business, and I'm going to assume in most of your organizations, you have a people development program, an IPMD, we call it, for Integrated Performance Development Management. It is where we engage our employees in their evaluations. But what's unique about ours, and that's why I want to talk to you about it a little bit, all the change that we expect, we tried to integrate into our long-standing, for many years, traditional program for people development. So we went and completely redefined success attributes. I'll talk about what success attributes are here briefly in just a few seconds. But this is that linkage that I was talking about before to get from current state to future state. So I'm taking a little extra time on the people side of it rather than the manufacturing side of it. So we needed to create and embed our behaviors that are necessary to drive future success in our business. Had to take some time to redefine those. We partnered with the Human Resource Organization for months to get that figured out and defined. But it was very valuable to us. And we'll talk a little bit about what that means. So what is success attribute? What is that? A success attribute really is those designed behaviors that we expect in a business. It's categorized into 4 subcomponents of thought, results, people, and self. That's how we manage and do our development programs. And in that, you can see on the right, the box on the right is an example of what one section of our IPMD would look like. So in this particular case, we have our attributes or our expected behaviors integrated into our personal evaluations. Performance measures provide continued reinforcement of the desired behaviors that we have in our business. Success is directly linked and dependent on and demonstrated in those attributes. So the box you see there on the left is what's pulled out. It's 3 categories of opportunity. It's the individual contributor, the manager or manager of processes, and it's the director. I'm going to read the bottom line, at least I'm going to use these glasses I borrowed, to read the bottom line out of there just to make sure I can see that. For the director, one of the changes that we would include in these behaviors was ensures personnel and personal or unstated goals and objectives do not conflict with the stated goals and objectives of the business. How often do we find, after spending some time with a director or a manager or someone in our business, their goals and objectives don't align to what we have established in our business? And if that happens, you're not going to achieve the success or certainly not the future state. But how do you measure that in a performance evaluation? Well, we bake them right into our performance evaluation. Another example is someone has a tendency to shortcut quality. In our evaluation, we didn't know how to address that. So now there says, promotes quality and makes quality a priority in their business. And you have a rating scale that you would agree with your manager on. Those were integrated into our individual performance plans. So now every employee in the business has to think about, be engaged, and be challenged on their commitment to quality. That's the start of change. That's sustainable change. And we'll talk about that. That's all levels within our business. And of course, to get that agreement, you have to have your leadership engaged. So here's how we deploy those changes and those goals and objectives in our business. It's a very busy slide, so I do apologize for that. But again, you see, and I meant to explain earlier, but I didn't, this circle on the upper right is probably easier to read here. This circle starts with the strategy, works its way around to our annual plan, which is the inputs. Then we create our goals and objectives. Our functional objectives come out of that. Then we have this IPMD that I just explained. From there, a learning plan, performance management, and then resource management, resource design, resource acquisition, all takes place to support the strategy. And that's our continuous loop. So if you look at that, the color-coded here, if you talk about the goals and objectives, those are individually defined in how you're going to tie those goals and objectives in this orangish, yellowish, depending on where you're sitting box, orangish, reddish box under objectives. Then you'll see that's where we tie our functional objectives, business objectives, etc. Then development plans go in the IPMD of the individual, and then the learning programs come out of that, all of which have to support. On the left, you see what we call our goal tree. And that is our organizational tool that defines every year the goals that we set out in the organization. And every location, every facility can see and link to those goals and objectives. So in our business, if you want to get change to really happen, you tie to that process. And so that's what we did. That blue leg that you see, the blue boxes, that's our Drive Business Excellence section of our goal tree. So it tied. So now with this, we have the leadership roadmap where we're setting expectations. We have provided guidance and direction throughout the whole organization to drive change. We've empowered our employees to know exactly the kind of behaviors we expect and the type of direction and goals and objectives we need to go forward. And from this point on, we have those behaviors defined. Sustainable cultural change can really have a chance to take place. Moving on to P number 2, and I'll pick up the pace a little bit through here, is product design and quality. As I mentioned before, often the product design gets left out of continuous improvement. So in our business, that's an input to your manufacturing operations, and those that work in the plants know this. I mean, if you have an input, it's certainly the design. So let me tell you a little bit about our products. In the schematic on the left just shows you that we have more than brake systems that are not just brake pads. We have valves, we have dash valves, electronic valves, we have control systems in the dash, all of the components that we provide, more than the pads on the end of the brake. We have the cab where we completely dress the cab, the truck that you see in the lower left of your picture. We have ABS systems, lane departure warning systems, various new technologies. And then we have our traditional products of wheel-end brakes, as you see in the picture, air disc brakes, compressors, and even the push-button valve that you may have seen in almost every truck on the road today. So how do we improve our legacy and our traditional designs because they were done in some cases 10, 20 years ago? So we look at our model. Most of our lean efforts in the past had been in these areas. Most of our improvement efforts had been in these areas. So the control of the supplier. Okay, go focus on our supplier organization. Control our internal manufacturing processes. Go work on functional tests that provide product delivery. From product delivery, we generate zero mileage and reliability. All in a very traditional metrics organization and metrics reporting processes where we do traditional Paretos and continuous improvement on those areas that continue to show up. But to get to a step change improvement, we had to find the other parts of this process that we weren't focusing on. And that is the upfront piece that many times our organization isn't willing to go challenge. That's the customer's needs defined or their expectations, how that ties into our product design, and how that ties into our process design. And then get into our manufacturing structure, if you will, our traditional structure. So in the top of this, you see a feedback loop. How many times have you had a Kaizen event or a lean event and you identified your biggest challenge was the design, but you can't go change the design? Well, I'm here to say you can go change the design. If you tie it to the right burning platform, there is times and there's appropriate needs to evaluate the design. In our business, we evaluated every design for every product to understand its impact on safety. And how that ties to the plant, and that's where I'm headed now, is the design FEMA. I'm not sure if everyone knows what a FEMA is, but it's a failure mode effect analysis tool that's system used across all the automotive industry, used across aerospace industry to really help identify pre-prescribed, if you will, defined outcomes and behaviors and expectations for your product's performance. If we look at the design FEMA for us, which is where you start at the top of the page, our design FEMA had to be changed. Then our control plans needed to be changed. And for us, that's not all that uncommon. But what we did that's different, that's applicable to most, is define what a good design FEMA looks like. If you really want to get to a degree of change and go forward, you need to define what good looks like. And many times we don't have that defined somewhere. So we bring a panel of our engineering experts together, we decide what good looks like, and then we go back and apply to existing processes to get to what is a good design FEMA. So from there, we get into all of our products have been categorized as to levels of risk, level 1, level 2, with 1 being our highest risk. So that's where we start. That's the products that we go address first. And in this process, it ties all the way down to our work instructions on the production floor. So from here, we expect sustainable results and key process changes. Moving into our next P, if we look at process improvements, for us, we had substantial process improvements. And in this area, we found some unique demands on our lean manufacturing and our business excellence organization. And that's where I wanted to talk about that briefly today. But going back to our guidebook, you see a picture on the right from a process design. These are things straight out of our guidebook as well. At this point, we feel pretty prepared to drive an improved process now that we've got an improved design. So as you can see, here is our guidebook. I'm going to talk briefly about item number 4, equipment and workplace design. In the equipment process improvements, this included now what is current capabilities of our products, of our equipment. What's the purchase process for our equipment? And how do we tie in to make sure our engineering and our purchasing organization are buying the right capabilities now and for our future state of standards and expectations? Preventative maintenance we talked about briefly, runoff procedures, functional test stand, all those are traditional expectations of our equipment. Mistake proofing and poke yoking, I'm sure you've heard a lot about and implemented poke yokes yourself, also needs to be defined. And then workspace design or workplace design and process improvements, control plans, product development linkage to what we're doing in the facility. That was a nice piece. The KPS standard approach, K again is for Knorr, so that's our truck production system and Knorr production systems, similar to the Toyota production systems. And the 7 types of waste. So in our guidebook, this is where we get into the traditional lean and continuous improvement. This is an area that I think most of us are very familiar with, and in our case, we had to figure out how do we integrate our design engineers and design improvements into these. So we went through a process of value stream mapping back in the main offices. How do we get our processes to link and tie, and what are the barriers as we make process improvements? A hybrid value stream mapping, I give you that, it's not your traditional. But in this case, we went in our finance organizations, we had involvement in our IT organization, administrative organizations, human resources, and remap those processes to identify the barriers that were happening and where we would get stuck on decisions about quality. Going back to our burning platform of achieving breakthrough levels of quality, not achieving slight improvements in quality. As again, I remind you, we had a complete new ERP system going in, so that allowed us to really dive into this area a lot. So the lean organization was being pulled into these office administrative lean activities, and that was a nice change for our business. We'll go back to the more traditional use here, and that's where we move to now, and that's the final P in the program. By this point, we've established our vision and our direction. We've got integrated and engagement with our people, clear development plans, expected behaviors defined across the business. We're a year or better into this program at this point. We also have clearly aligned goals and objectives for the facility. We've done the foundation projects that I mentioned along the way to show good success as we're moving forward. We've completely revised all product designs, especially level 1s, and we've now designed our processes, made those tie and linked our process improvements. But before we can get any benefits from all of those, we have to witness it on the shop floor. We have to see it change at our shop floor and then at our customer. So in this particular case, in this section, I'll show you how we tied it in at the production floor. So you see the boxes that start on the left with customer need moving to the D FEMA. We talked about that's what would drive the changes. We reevaluated that design FEMA, changes in our processes, the P FEMA, which is basically a process FEMA, and then control plans. Those are, how do we engage those into our Kaizen events, into our plant activities? And that's where the really nice awareness became a priority for us. As we scheduled a production line or a Kaizen event, we made sure we integrated those changes and brought in our design engineers into the process. So we integrated changes such as the product designs, process controls and measures into the normal Kaizen events of standardized work, SMED, TPM, etc., value stream mapping, and got those engagements to really see these Kaizen events now tied to the overall business burning platform. So through introducing through the Kaizen events, I would ask, what are your business burning platform again? And when you're going to drive lean or when you're going to drive continuous improvement, how do you engage those burning platforms in what you're doing at your location? Again, I pointed out, here's a brief example. It's very traditional, so I won't cover all of it, but I want to point out a couple things. As an example, on our first day where we're trying to integrate quality into lean, we review with our manufacturing team, which never happened before this event, the design FEMA and what that means and what the risks are if certain things aren't applied appropriately, and identified critical workstations and defined those in the facility. Day 2, normal traditional activities, Wednesday traditional activities, and then on Thursday we get the design FEMA and the process FEMA and the control plan and our work instructions and demonstrate how they link for our operators, whether that's in Spanish or whether that's in English, either way. So that's an interesting change to our Kaizen event. Then on Friday, rather than validating production and making sure you're hitting your expectation for your tack time, as well as your expectation for your quality output and your roll throughput yield, depending on the terms you use, we also made sure that every part tied to the changes that we did in the design, the changes that we did in our process FEMA. And then we went through this exercise with our suppliers. So that was a big endeavor and a big engagement. So having said that, the pictures on the right are our workshops, and the nice thing about it is we had our designers involved, including some executives came to participate, but that's not quite as critical as having the design engineers there and the manufacturing engineers. As I mentioned, many times we talk about our suppliers, and in this case we had to work with our supply chain as well. I won't spend a lot of time here, so I only have one slide left here on the supplier, but I did want to point out we needed a very structured approach with our supply chain. So we developed a manual called our Quality Management Program for Procurement. We got all our suppliers to sign this manual and agree to conduct their business in this way with our products. We went through them with the importance of safety in our products. It was an interesting example that came out. We sat down, we had 100, 110 CEOs and quality managers attend our event. And at that location, I went around and talked to some of them, before and then after. I was amazed to find that we had suppliers producing parts for us that did not know the criticality of that part. They did not know if they missed this parameter, small that it might be, you potentially wouldn't stop the school bus that children were riding in. Their response to me was, well, had we known it was that critical, what? You would have done what? Well, that's what we need you to do. And is that we need you to put a visual tool, a poke yoke in place? What are those processes that have to happen for you to have control to make sure safety is addressed in that process? So that was a nice event for us. Out of the programs with our suppliers, we developed a benchmark process called PAVE. It's a new model, it's a new tool that we've created. It's from a predictive analysis for vendor escalation. How can we quickly escalate an issue and address that issue very quickly? But more importantly, how many times your suppliers have little escapes and little issues over the last year or two, and the only one you really go send resources to address is that big failure? Well, we've demonstrated through some research and studies, there are always little failures that accumulate before the big failure happens, that demonstrate processes are not completely in control. So in our suppliers and ourselves, we now are looking for what are those predictive signals? What are those accumulative little escapes that says the processes were out of control, let's go evaluate them before we have a major escape. That was another great outcome of our supplier engagement in our burning platform and our breakthrough quality and our lean initiatives. So that was a nice event, and in that we then asked the question, do you have capable processes? And if you don't, how do you get those capable? How do we help you get those capable? And can you clearly identify special characteristics and critical characteristics in your manufacturing processes with our suppliers? Interesting for us, we also learned that we hadn't engaged our internal supply chain organization very well in our lean events. What we also understood, the opportunity for engagement and that hidden knowledge within your business, is realizing that in our supply chain we had 144 interfaces for one supplier. 144 different ways someone else in our business would talk to that supplier. I promise you we didn't all give the exact same instructions or the exact same message. So looking at those management interfaces was another outcome that came out of our event with our suppliers. So very important improvements. So engaging your internal supply chain to partner with you to address your external supply, I think is absolutely a good idea to drive forward. So coming to conclusion here, wanted to just wrap up. Our efforts in breakthrough quality may not be what you need, but the structure and the approach that we took certainly has opportunities to engage your whole organization. You need a vision linked to your strategies. You need to be tied to your burning platforms of your business. You need to realize you have to have dedicated efforts, and priorities need to be tied, otherwise you won't get the support you need. Complete and very important execution plan throughout the long term of what your future state looks like, and then leadership champions. Then communication and awareness, but not just buy-in, it has to be belief. Communication, and then everyone needs to believe this is the right thing for your business to be engaged in. Share your successes and failures, a very traditional approach, but establish expectations, I can't say that enough, as to what you think the desired behaviors and improvements need to be. And then use an organizational change management. Don't underestimate the effort that it takes to plan the change in your culture, because it will happen. Change will come. It'll happen one way or the other. How do you influence it? How do you make it change the direction you want it to go, rather than allowing it to just transform on its own as a result? So I have one more slide, and I want to take another little bit of a liberty just to challenge everyone in the business, everyone in the program. And you had a great event here. You've had a chance to tour facilities. You've gone through numerous introductions and communications around lean and continuous improvement. So I'd like to leave you with some challenges. My challenge to you, our challenge to you, is do you know your burning platforms? What is your burning platform in your business? Do you know what your future state looks like? How do you tap the hidden knowledge without suppressing that exists within your organization? Are you setting the right expectations for your people in the terms of behavior and actions and reactions to your future state? If you're in a plant and that's your focus, what's your future state look like? Once everyone understands, how do you get them on board? So what's your future state look like? Are your processes aligned to that? And that's important. Can you effectively leverage your continuous improvement team and the things that you've learned? How do you leverage those and integrate your burning platforms? What's most important to your business? And then, lastly, does your leadership team understand their role and the changes that they need to ask for, the changes that they need to do as well? And they'll need help with that. We needed help with that. And then, finally, can you leverage this event to embark on your own breakthrough journey? Thank you. And although I promised to pay attention to the time, I did not. So I think we have time for some questions and answers. And if anyone has any questions, I'd certainly entertain those.
Hi. How do you facilitate effective communication between your R&D sites and your manufacturing sites?
Well, that's interesting. Can you hear me still? It's interesting because that's a very good question. How do you create an interface? And first off is we help the engineering sites realize that 34% of our failures somehow were linked to design. And once they accepted that the design was, we made it easier by prioritizing their products. They have hundreds and hundreds, just like you may, of products. We helped them realize of these, this group are our high-risk products. So how can you not address its high-risk products in the field for us? Again, that burning platform is safety. So you now have a group that you can focus on. 34% of our overall issues in quality can tie back to design. So we got that engagement and that belief. And then we brought our manufacturing team to the engineering organization first to get that teamwork going so they understood we're working on this together. So we started with our engineering organization before we went to the plants. Otherwise, we wouldn't get the engineering people to come, wouldn't pull them in. So we started with them. Thank you. I hope that answers your question. Other questions?
John.
We have one over here. Another brave soul.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Obviously, being in the automotive commercial industry, you have some type of ISO registration. What is the value of that when that's not really going to take you to your breakthrough level?
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And what are you doing with that?
Well, it's a very, very fair question, and I may get myself in trouble, but there may not be value in that certification for your organization. The value may not be in the certification, but it will certainly be in setting standards and processes that any organization can follow. So if that certification gives your organization that foundation of structure, gives you an excuse to get your processes defined and structured, that's how you get to some controls, some standards, some repetitive processes and repetitive behaviors. Also, the other challenge that it should provide, if it doesn't, again, it may not be a necessity, is does your customer at all appreciate standard processes and recognize that now you can differentiate slightly because you can provide a better product, a better control, better process. And if it doesn't, then the leadership team would have to decide if the effort's worth it. That's a fair question. In a small business that I was in prior to getting in aerospace, which is where before I was in automotive, I was in the aerospace industry, we went through that challenge. It was a bit of a challenge to get leadership to accept or not accept. But what we did is a process audit where we brought our leadership team to participate in a half-a-day event. And in that, we showed questions that he would ask us questions about these processes. Those processes, we had no link. We had no structure. We would show him this gentleman would do it one way, and this lady would do it another way. And between the two, one did better performance. So in the traditional thinking, maybe that's the individual. But when you get a leader involved and understand that the standard processes and the structured approach, it's really the value that comes out of those certifications. That's what it's about. It's this process standardization, not as much the certification, unless you happen to be fortunate enough to be in an industry where it's required. In our case, our customers require it. In yours, they probably do not. So I would look at the standard approach and the benefit that comes out of those standards. That's where I would lean. Good question, though. Thank you. Other questions? Did I offer enough exercise? I have to take credit for that at the office. Okay, well, thank you very much.